everyone. Welcome to our first virtual pre-race meeting for Stubborn Fool 2021. My name is Paula Waite. I'm the race director for this event. And I'd like to talk to you in this video about some of the rules around Stubborn Fool 2021 and give a bit of a course overview and hopefully get some of your questions answered about what's going to happen on Saturday. Before I get started with that, I just want to welcome not only our veteran racers who've been back year after year supporting adventure racing and our organization, but also a special welcome to all the new racers out there. Many of the veterans you're going to see out there, including myself as a race director, started racing, probably 20 years ago or more when we saw Eco Challenge on TV the first time around. And I know many of you new racers watched Eco Challenge last fall and got hooked. And so I hope that you find that this is the beginning of a really fun life, a great family of adventure racers, and tons of great events on tap for this year. So welcome to all of you. And thank you for coming to our event. Looking forward to seeing all of you on Saturday. Before I get started into the details, I have some thank yous. First thank yous go out to the volunteer crew who will be helping out on Saturday. I think it's important for especially new folks to realize that this isn't anybody's full-time gig. All of the race directors, I think at least in the Wisconsin Adventure Racing series, this is a hobby for us. And so we all have full-time jobs and we fit this in because we love the sport so much. Same thing with the volunteers. They aren't paid to do this, so please show your appreciation to them on race day. Anything that, I always say this, anything that you don't like about the race, that's on me. All the good stuff is on them because they're going to do a great job for you on Saturday. Their job is really to keep you safe and keep things moving along. So with that, I want to just introduce them to you. Kathy, longtime volunteer, I think she's been with us pretty much since day one. Will be at the paddle TA, she'll be the lead there. And then Candy and Ryan are two new volunteers this year, interested in learning more about adventure racing, and they'll be helping Kathy out. So please say hello to them. So that was Kathy, Candy, and Ryan at the paddle TA. You guys, thank you very, very much. And then at HQ, checking you in and probably also working at the finish and being there all day long will be Julie, Sarah, and Martine. They all have adventure racing experience, some more than others, and they all have experience volunteering with our organization as well. So we've got a great crew on tap. You will see me probably mostly at HQ, but I might be out on the course hoping to run into you folks out there as well. And then a thank you to Clark County, Nate Beaver with the Parks, Forest, and Parks Department. Work closely with him on permitting, and it's always interesting trying to bring an event to a new area where they maybe aren't super familiar with adventure racing, and Nate's been really great about making this event happen and promoting it a little bit for us as well. And then on the Levis Mound crew, Steve Merritt has been really, really helpful in making sure that trails are ready and keeping an eye on things for us and being a great resource as we worked on course design. So thank you to Steve as well. And then a big thank you to Mike Garrison, Executive Director of USARA. Some of you know Mike, and Mike spent probably the better part of a day or more trying to work through some of the licensing issues because I really wanted to do a contactless check-in for you guys. And what that meant was you all signing up on Run Sign Up and getting the licensing done that way, and then we had to kind of merge that stuff together, and Mike did a lot of work on that. So thanks, Mike, for all the time you put in this last week. And then big thank you to Anthony with Badger Orienteering and Elk Bones. He's racing today. And also to MINOC, the Minnesota Orienteering Club. Sort of at the last minute, I got pretty gung-ho about using epunch, and I'll talk more about that later. But they were very, very gracious about renting us equipment, making sure the equipment got here on really short notice, and walking through setup. So to those guys, thank you so much. Your race experience is going to be vastly improved. If you haven't used epunch before, it rocks. And I think those of you who've done some of the other events where it was there, you understand the benefits. So we're excited about that. And I'll talk more about that if you're like, what is this epunch thing? Don't worry, more details coming on that. Before I get into the race overview, I want to talk about some of the rules. I'm not going to go through all of them. But I want to talk about some of the key ones that sometimes might be confusing or get glossed over that I just want to highlight. All the race rules you have already. They were posted on the website. I hope that you've read them carefully. There will also be a copy in your race instructions that you get online, actually, and then you'll have a hard copy on Saturday. Please read through those. The idea behind these rules is really to serve two purposes. That is your safety, safety of everyone around you, including our race crew, and also the community, and then fairness. I want to maintain the integrity of the race, and so the rules are in place for that as well. So I'm not going to cover every item here, but I want to highlight a few things. So for those, especially those of you who are new to adventure racing and maybe come from another sport like 5Ks or triathlons or that kind of thing, this course is not closed just to us. So we haven't shut down Levis or shut down the lake so that you all can just, you know, bike and paddle wherever you like without having to worry about anyone else being out there. This is an open course. The public is going to be out there, especially on Saturday when it's going to be 70 degrees. So know that you need to share the trails, the roadways, the lands, the water with the public, and so be courteous to them, please, and represent our sport and our organization as best you can. Next up, the roads. So paved roads especially, please ride single file, be really careful. Some of the roads are a little bit busier, and again, because it's going to be a nice weekend and we're in a recreational area, I expect some kind of high traffic. So make sure that when you are on those busy roads, ride single file, get off to the side. You know, some of those unpaved roads, you probably ride two abreast, but just be careful, be aware of your surroundings and be aware of the traffic. At the paddle TA, and I mentioned this in the update, there are a couple shelters there that are going to look really inviting for when you come in, get off your bike, you're going to want to lean your bike against the picnic table under the shelter and maybe sit down and do some planning. Please don't do that. We are not permitted for the shelters, and my expectation is that the public is probably going to be wanting to use those shelters on a nice weekend like this, especially being a holiday weekend. So I want us to stay out of those shelters so that we don't have any conflicts with the public and that we respect them. So please do your planning and your staging of gear and that kind of stuff out in the marked areas, and the volunteers will direct you to where that is if it's not already clear. Let's see, as a team sport, it's expected that you are going to work together as a team. So that means staying together, and this is one of the early points in the rules. That means on foot, 10 meters. 10 meters is not very far. For me, it's about 20 paces. So maybe pace that off so that you understand what that distance looks like. Please abide by this rule. Don't send the person who has all kinds of energy off to run up the hill while you all wait and eat and have snacks, and they're, 100 meters away. Go to the top of the hill also, or close to, right? You need to stay within 20 meters. You may not have to walk right to the CP, 20 paces, but be there with them. So you should be at every single point together. If you notice teams that are not following this rule, please remind them, and if there's somebody who's really flagrant about it, please let me know so we can address that issue. It's hard for us to be everywhere, but we can try if we need to be out monitoring that kind of thing. With regard to distance on the bike and the paddle, that distance is 30 meters. I know it's a little bit more difficult on water and on the roads to stay at that really close pace. So 30 meters for that, still not very far. So make sure you're abiding by that. If you're curious about where these rules came from, a lot of the rules out of this rule set are what you can expect to see at nationals. So it's kind of preparing myself and you guys for that. Private property. So on the paddle, almost all of the property there is private. So please respect that. One of the rules, as we'll see when you're looking at the race instructions, is that you need to obtain the points by the discipline described. So the paddle points, you should be paddling your canoe very, very close to that point. You might have to take a step or two out of the boat in order to actually punch, but overall you should be paddling. I'm not expecting that a team is going to beach their boat and go running a mile down the shoreline in order to get the CP. So please do that by boat or you're going to be trespassing. Note that the controls are hung on public property, but all around that is private. So please stay on the water. And when you approach the CP, you should be able to see it, step out, get it, and then hop back in the boat. private property that you're going to run into on foot, I have marked, and on bike, I have marked some of it where I think maybe a team might try to cut through somewhere. So I've marked that as private, but there's much more private property than what is marked on the map. So if something's posted private, don't go there. If you are planning your route and you're curious about a choice, please ask me. I'll be available at HQ as you all are planning your route. So if you have any questions about where you can and can't go, please ask. Let's see, last thing. Adventure racing, you need to be self-sufficient, especially in COVID times. So oftentimes we might provide water at least at the TAs, and we are not doing that this round. So make sure that you are prepared with everything that you need for the day. In addition, despite what you might have seen on TV, we're not coming out with a helicopter or even by car to rescue you if you get tired or you scrape your knee or you're lost. So be prepared to take care of yourselves out there. That said, if you have an emergency and somebody is really injured, please call 911. There are emergency procedures in your handbook or in the racer instructions, so please follow those. But I just want you to understand that you're out there. You're going to come back under your own power back to HQ. All right? Okay. Very last thing before I get to the good stuff, which is the race overview. Please make sure that you are wearing appropriate face coverings. We've been permitted to do this event because we had a COVID plan in place, and that includes wearing face coverings, not just a buff, not just pulling your collar up over your nose. So the gear list has a description, and this was also in a race update. Anytime you are not paddling, navigating, or biking, so you're in TA, you're at check-in, you're in HQ, you should have that mask on. Anytime you are close to somebody in the public, less than 6 feet, you want to put that mask on. So have it available as you're out on the trails because you may not be able to always quickly move off 6 feet out of the way. So I hope that's clear, and I hope you all understand the need for that, and that rule is in place regardless of your vaccination status or any other reasons that you might feel you might not need to wear a mask. You do need to wear one. All right, finally, on to the race itself. So the winner of this race will be the team that obtains the most CPs in the least amount of time by following the rules. So there are a total of 30 possible CPs. 21 are land nav CPs, so on foot, and 4 are on the bike, 5 are on the paddle. So I just want to say, while there's 30 CPs out there, my expectation is that some of the top teams, the experienced teams, will probably clear that course. That's my expectation. But for many of you, you are probably not going to clear the course, and I worry sometimes that new teams are really disappointed by that, like, I didn't finish the race because I didn't get them all. That's not the intent here. There's a lot of points out there, and the thing that I like about that is it allows you to choose how you want to spend your day. You can spend a lot of time working on the orienteering or land nav if you want to, or more time on the bike and the paddle. You're going to do a bit of each discipline, but you really get to pick and choose how you want to spend your day. So again, don't be disappointed if you haven't swept the course on your first race. All right, so on Saturday, what does Saturday look like? First, please abide by the staging, check-in, and start windows. Again, we were permitted because we had a plan for how we were going to avoid gathering and make sure that things were spaced out appropriately, so please stick to those windows. So let's start with the gear drop at the paddle TA. Again, I mentioned about the pavilion, so please don't stage gear in there. Kathy and Candy will be there, and I may be there at the very beginning of staging to kind of get things set up and get you all directed to where equipment should go. If you are bringing a boat and you have your paddles and your PFDs and maybe you want to leave some food and water and a few other things, please put that stuff in the boat or under the boat so that it's all in one place and kind of secured and not spread all over. If you're a team that is renting a boat but want to maybe drop off your own paddles, your own PFDs, maybe you want to leave a jug of water, that's perfectly fine. Just bundle that stuff together, label it with your team name, so put it in a big black garbage bag or something like that. Leave it at the staging area so that it's all in one place, and we can keep things pretty confined that way. For those of you who don't need to stage anything, there's no need to stop by the paddle staging area. Your paddle equipment will be there when you arrive. So that means canoe, paddles, PFDs, all of that business. That stuff's not coming until after 9 o'clock. So if you're hoping to maybe go and check out your boat or something like that, that is not really going to be available necessarily to everybody. So don't expect to be getting your particular boat set up or anything like that. So part of the rental is that you'll just grab the boat that's available to you at that time. Let's see. Oh, I should also mention those who are renting. The rental equipment for the canoe are single blade paddles. There will be some kayaks for our solo racers, and they'll have a double blade paddle. So I just want to make sure the double blade paddles stay with the kayaks and our solo racers, and those of you renting canoes have a single blade paddles. Let's see, what else am I missing here? Oh yeah, we are not transporting gear back after the paddle. Many of you have raced with us before. I know a lot of times we'll take all the gear back to HQ so it's there when you finish the race. We're not doing that this year, so after you finish, please go back, pick up your equipment as soon as you can so that everybody's got their stuff. I know it's really easy to hop in the car and drive home at the end of a race and forget gear. Please, please, please make sure that you grab that stuff. I don't think teams tend to leave their boats, but they tend to leave just PFDs and that kind of thing, so keep track of that. All right, so check-in. When you arrive at Levis, I shared the map with you about where to park, so I want to make sure that we can all get in there. And I'm expecting it to be a little bit busy because the trail's just open, so there are probably going to be some public users there as well, so just keep that in mind. Park, close to the other vehicles, close as you can, so that we can fit everybody in. So when you arrive during your check-in window, you will have one person come up to the check-in and we'll be set up by the chalet. So it's there's two buildings, there's like a maintenance building and then there's a chalet. That's where we'll be set up with race packets and stuff like that. One person from your team should come up, bring all of the waivers for your team. So remember that you should have printed and signed those waivers already. If you haven't, make sure you print them, fill them out, and write your team number in the upper right-hand corner so we can easily keep track of what's come in. So when you come in to check in, that one person will just show that you've got the waivers, put them in a drop box for us, and then there will be a bunch of goodie bags and racer packets and maps. And so you will find your goodie bag, which will have a label on it with your team number, your team name, your category, racer names, and the shirt sizes that you each ordered. And you'll also have a race packet. And then there'll be a bucket of maps rolled up. And you should be able to just grab one without touching anything else, and you're good to go. So we're grabbing three things. Your topo map, that's the waterproof one, your packet, and your goodie bag. So I'm going to just talk about the goodie bag really quick. Most of this you don't really need for the race unless you want to wear your shirts as a team. But one thing that I do want to call attention to is the list of races, because you're going to be hooked or looking for your next race at the end of Stubborn Fool. And so there are some great races coming up. Elk Bones, who is racing this weekend, their race is on May 1st. And then Rib Mountain that's a 4 and a 9 hour race, so two different lengths. For you guys who just are doing a 6 hour, want to step up to the 9, you'll be set for that. And then Rib Mountain, their adventure race, they have a 3, 8, and an 18 hour that I think starts on Friday night, if I'm not mistaken. So really great experience getting to race in the dark if you want that. That is May 29th. Code Blue Challenge is coming up June 12th. There's a 4 hour and a 10 hour Madison area, and that's Medicus Rex. Jeff is racing today as well. I should have said Rib Mountain's racing, of course, so look for Tim, Anna, and Eric. And then end of June, back to 180 Adventure, Stubborn Mule Adventure Race. We have a 5, a 12, and a 30 hour race up in Washburn. Really, really excited about that event. We moved a little further north because we're also hosting nationals in the Cable Hayward area where we normally have Stubborn Mule. So we thought we'd use a little bit different venue so we're not duplicating this year. So lots more races after that through July, August, September, October, and November. So you can race every month if you want to. so be sure to check that out. All right, the race packet. What's in here? In here are your race instructions. Has a rules page on the front. I've posted this or sent this to you, so you do have a copy of this already. There'll be a hard copy in here for you. And then there are a few maps. There's a Clark County bike map, which I'm going to talk more about in a little bit. And there are 2 navigation maps. I can show you those yet. You'll see those on Saturday. And there is a Levis Trout trail map, so handy when you're out on the trails. There are bib numbers for each team member. There are pins in there, so pin the number on. And then your finger stick. This is how you're recording your punches throughout the day, so very, very important. Make sure you don't lose it. Make sure it's securely attached to your team member who is punching. All right, so back to the finger stick. I'm going to talk about how epunch works just in case you have not, and I suspect many of you have not used it before. So, real quick, we've got this little finger stick that goes on the finger, and this thing has a little chip in it that will record information. So as I find my controls, orienteering flags that are hanging out in the woods, so if clue is a hilltop, I'm going to go find this on the hilltop. And to prove that I've been there, I'm going to dip my finger stick into the control, and I'll show an up close shot of that in a second. But before you start the race, we have a little bit of prep to do to get started with that. When you are ready to start in your start window, you'll come up to the start area, and there is a clear control. I'm just going to pull this up so you all can see it. And you need to clear the stick to wipe out any old data that's on the stick. So I'm just going to pop that in here. It's going to beep, and it also flashed. Hopefully you can see that. So the stick is now empty, and I'm all set to start racing. So once I've done that, then there's going to be, or there is, a start control. So the time that you punch this, that's your start time. And that's going to be different for everybody. So you can't come to the TA and say, hey, how much time do I have left? Because they're not going to know when you started. And this thing doesn't have a clock on it that tells us. So make sure that you're paying attention to the time that you start so that you're back in time. Because for each minute you're late, coming back, you lose the CP. So that time is very, very important. You want to be back in 6 hours or less. So when your team is ready to start, you'll start on foot regardless of whether you're going to be biking or land navving first. And so you'll just dip the start, you probably heard the beep, and off we go. As you get to the different controls, the controls again have a similar unit on it. It has a number on there, and that number is in the race instructions per CP. So this is CP 56, and you should be able to dip without any contact, or punch without any contact. So I can step up, punch, and off I go. Now on the off chance that you don't hear the beep, see the light, maybe something's not working correctly, I don't think this is going to happen, but we do have a backup plan. There is a manual punch hanging here, so you're just going to want to pierce your ear with that, and then we'll check the punch when you get back. Or you could just punch your bib number. So the Tyvek bib numbers work really well for retaining the punch configuration. So if that happens, punch your bib instead and show us that at the finish line, or give that to us at the finish line. Oh, one more thing, the finish line. So when you're all done and you come back in, there are going to be a couple more units like this. One says finish. That's the time that you're done. So you want to make sure to dip that before that 6 hour mark. And then we'll have a finish area where you're going to download the results, and we'll get those posted out to the web as soon as we can. I'm not going to guarantee that it's within an hour or whatever, but I'm going to try to get that done as quickly as we can. And then you'll turn your finger stick in. So that's kind of the epunch business. If you have questions, please ask. I think it'll make sense once you're doing it. Okay. All right. A couple things. One more thing about Levis. We are not permitted for biking there, so bikes need to stay in the parking lot. I know sometimes folks want to warm up a little bit in the morning before the race starts. That's fine. Just bike out the driveway and down the roads. As enticing as the trails are going to look, I know, please, please, please don't bike on them. We've agreed that we would not do that. None of the bikes for our race will be riding on the trails or the cross-country ski trail, so please honor that. All right, so race start. Race start is on foot. I think I mentioned this, but I'm going to say it again. Just for safety concerns and because we only want the bikes in the parking lot area, when you come up to start and dip to start off, be on foot, and then you can run to the parking lot and get on your bikes if you're going to bike first. If not, then you can take off for the land nav if that's what you're doing first. You do need to start in your window. So let's say you checked in and you're like, oh, it's taking us longer to plan, and boy, we'd like to take 2 hours to plan and then just start a little bit later. You have to start in your start window. So if your start window is 9 a.m. until 9:30, if you start at 9:45, I'm going to manually reset your start time to 9:30. I'm a big meanie, aren't I? But I want to make sure that nobody's gaining a really unfair advantage by starting later. And I also want to make sure that you're starting in the start windows that we promised we would use to keep everybody staggered. Okay, so please stick to those windows. Just a word about those. I mentioned there were 2 nav maps. There's a northern map and a southern map for the navigation. Those maps are exactly what's here, except for zoomed in. So there's not any more detail on those maps. It's just a little, it's as if you're on your iPad or your device and you've kind of zoomed in. You don't get more detail, but things are a little bit bigger, right? So you can see. So what's on this map will also be at least the navigation sections so that you can see a little bit better. The scale of this map is 1 to 20, and the scale of the nav maps are 1 to 10, I believe. Yes, 1 to 10. So as you're measuring 1 centimeter is 100 meters, that's that 1 to 10,000 scale. All right, so the land nav maps are really zoomed in, and I've tried to put as much onto an 8.5 by 11 page as I can. What that means is that if you only have that sheet of paper and you didn't take your big topo map with you, it would be very easy to walk off the edge of the little map if you weren't paying attention and be lost. So please keep all of your maps with you so that if that happens, if you get off the land nav map, that you can figure out where you are and recover. So don't just take one map at a time with you, take them all with you. And those 8.5 by 11s are the ones that are not waterproof. I don't know that we're going to have rain on Saturday. I don't think so, but remember, you're going to probably have those maps with you when you're paddling, so make sure that you protect them, and you're sweating on them as well. So protect those in a waterproof map case. The little nav maps, I did not put a key on those or a legend in the interest of space. So know that the legend or the key is the one that's on the topo map, the big topo map. It's the same. It's essentially the same map, again, just zoomed in. So if you're not sure what the blue dash trail means, use the key on the big map in order to understand that. You also have a county bike map. That one's really good, and I'll talk more about that as I give you a bit of a course overview. Before I get into that course overview, or I show an overview map, I just want to talk about race format. So this is choose your own adventure. You can do the events in any order that you like. You could go do a little land nav, and then get on the bike, go paddle, come back, do more land nav. It's completely up to you. The restriction, though, is that you need to, in order to be a full course team, is 1 bike point, 1 paddle point, and 1 foot nav point. And that might seem like a low bar, and I hope that it feels that way on race day, that you can get 1 of each. The reason that we do that is just to make sure that everybody's doing the full experience, right? Not just coming out and orienteering. We want you doing all of the events. So that's a full course team. If for some reason you don't paddle and you only do foot nav and bike nav, even if you get more points than a team that did all 3 disciplines, you're considered short course because you didn't do all 3 disciplines, and your team will be ranked lower than the teams that do the full course, meaning 1 point out of each. So just keep that in mind as you're planning and making decisions about what you do want to do and don't want to do. So I'm going to just cut over and show you an overview of the race course. Because some of the land nav, there's some language in the instructions around using the bikes to get close to points, and I want to just show that on a map because I think that'll be a little bit more clear. So I'm going to cut.
I'd like to use this map just to provide a bit of an overview. This is not, the base map here is the southern portion of the Clark County bike map, and you will be receiving that. What you won't have are my annotations on here, and I've just added them in so that I have some things to point to as I'm talking to you about the race course. Just a word about the bike map. What I like about the bike map is that it has names on the roads, which your topo maps are not going to have. And it also does a nice job of indicating which roads are paved and which roads are not, and also which roads might be a little bit busier and not quite so busy. So you can use that as you're planning your day and where you might plan to ride. All of the trails and roads that are out in the world that you may encounter are not on this map. So this is pretty high level, but it would be useful as you're navigating around the course. So keep this as one of your tools. Now onto the course. So the course is Choose Your Own Adventure. You'll be starting at HQ, and you're all familiar with where the paddle TA is. You can choose to navigate or bike first. Obviously you can't paddle first because you need to get down to the paddle. You could do that by bike. I wouldn't recommend doing that part on foot. So from HQ, you're either on foot or biking. And I want to talk more about the nav section. So there are two navigation sections roughly in these areas. This is not 100% accurate, but it's just there so that I can explain a couple things to you. That being that the points that are in the nav sections do need to be obtained on foot. You're not allowed to bike in the rec area on the single track trails or the ski trails. And so I have marked on your course maps, the topo maps anyway, the boundary of that. So where you are allowed to ride your bikes is essentially on the roads, and you're not allowed to ride within the rec area. And that should be pretty clear on the maps. If you have questions about it on race day, please ask. My point in talking about this is that while the points on nav section 1 are pretty close, many of them, to the TA in the start, nav 2 is a little bit further away. And so you may choose to ride your bike into this area and leave your bike and then obtain these points on foot. You don't have to do that. It might turn out that your team realizes as you're maybe up in this corner of the nav that, oh boy, we're real close, we're just going to get this all on foot. Or you might be a team that's decided, you know what, no, we're going to bike up there and try to get close to a couple points and run in and grab them. So it's really a decision that you make. Again, it's marked on the maps in terms of where you can have those bikes. The bikes can't be on the single track trails or the cross-country ski trails. And I think that should be pretty clear by the boundaries that have been drawn. All right, so that's kind of the overview. And we'll get back to the rest of the course discussion.
All right, just a few more words about the race course. So as you are riding down to the paddle, it is possible that you'll be riding past or very close to one of the paddle CPs. Do not hop off your bike and punch that paddle CP. So the paddle CPs really do need to be punched from the water. And so we'll be keeping track of when you got on the water and when you come back off and verifying that the punches that you got are done during the time in which you are on the water. So just keep that in mind. Please use the discipline that we've assigned to the various EPs. I think I mentioned this already, but I'm going to say it again. The control points for the paddle are all on public land, but the land around them is all private. So you need to paddle to the CP. You should be able to see it from the water. You may have to step out onto shore a few steps to actually punch it. Some you'll be able to punch from the water, but some you will actually have to get out. And again, it's just a few steps. So please do not beach your canoe at one location and then go running down the shore for a half mile to punch the other CP. You have got to paddle from CP to CP. And just a note about this, other races might be different. And in fact, some of my races might be different around this rule. But for this race, that's the rule. So just be aware of that. In general, adventure races, the race directors can decide what the rules are for a given event. So the rules don't all apply to every single race, but for this race, you cannot get out of the boat, can't portage it, etc. A couple more things about the paddle. The ice just came off the lake, so there was a very nervous race director the last few weeks trying to find webcams to see if the ice was off the lake and making some phone calls and Facebook requests to find out if the ice was off, and it was earlier this week. But that said, there's a lot of debris in the lake. So there are rivers that come into that lake, and a lot of logs and other junk that's coming from the spring or from the winter melt is in the lake. So just be aware of that there might be some logs floating around out there. So pay attention. It might be adventure paddling more than ever. The other thing, safety issue, there's a dam at the south end of the lake. You'll see that on your map. So as you're paddling in that area, just be aware. I'm not putting any points close to that you need to go right next to the dam. So make sure that you steer clear of that. Let's see. End of the race, again, please watch your time. Make sure that you are back within that 6-hour window so that you don't lose any CPs. 1 CP per minute late gets very expensive. When you come back in, I talked about the finishing process. There are finisher awards that you can help yourself to. There are a few door prizes. We don't have a ton for you, but those teams that had an early wave and had to get up early, you're going to have first dibs at some of those door prizes. Last thing, I will do my best to get the results published up to the web as soon as we can. I know it might feel really enticing to come back up to the results table and ask for that, but we're trying to make sure that we don't have any evidence of gathering, so please don't hang out, even though it's going to be a beautiful day, hang out at the chalet. As much as I would love to do that with all of you, we need to make sure we kind of clear out of the area relatively quickly after you all finish the race. Let's see. And then don't forget to pick up your gear. I'm going to tell you now. I hope we remember to tell you at the end of the race, too. If you have paddle gear, go get it. And then I've got some questions that have come in already, so I just want to cover those. First one, it's going to be 70 at least on Saturday. It's going to be beautiful. And you, Paula, race director, have on the gear list this polypropylene hat, and you want me to have pants and all this stuff, a rain jacket. It's not going to rain. Do I have to have that? Yes. The ice just came off the lake. If you go swimming, you're going to really want that clothing. So please make sure that you do have your mandatory gear, that stuff is on the list for a reason. Same thing with space blanket and that kind of thing. And I get cold on a paddle sometimes in summer even, so just keep that in mind. Next question, do I need a trail pass at Levy's Trout? And you do not. The trail passes are only necessary for folks who are mountain biking on the trails, and we are not doing that. So we don't need trail passes. Trail passes for cross-country skiing too, but we're certainly not doing that. So no trail passes. And then, as you're looking at the clues for the various CPs, one of the questions that often comes up, what is a reentrant? A reentrant, you can think of it as a gully, or if we're kind of on a hillside and there's a gully there, where is the water going to run if it was raining really hard? So that's what a reentrant is. There are a few of those where you'll be looking for reentrants. Keep in mind that the topography here, some of those reentrants are a little bit mild. So you might be imagining this huge gully that you're going to have to climb down into. Some of them are a little bit gentler than that. So keep that in mind. Make sure you're reading your maps carefully. All right. That is it for this first race update. I can't wait to see all of you on Saturday. It's going to be a great day. please let me know if you have any questions, and we'll get them answered for you. We'll see you soon.